November 28th, 1953. 2:30 in the morning. Statler Hotel, New York City. A man crashes through a closed window. Glass explodes outward. Curtains tear. A body falls 13 stories. He lands on the pavement below, dead on impact. Police arrive quickly. The scene appears simple. A troubled man, a hotel room, a fall, suicide. But this was not a random guest. The man who fell was a U.S. Army scientist, top secret clearance, working inside America's biological weapons program, recently exposed to LSD, without his knowledge, by the CIA. And within hours of his death, phone calls were made, reports were shaped, details were minimized. For 22 years, the story remained quiet, until classified programs began leaking into daylight. This is not just about a fall. It is about what happens when intelligence agencies experiment on their own. This is the file on Frank Olson. Frank Olson was not reckless. He was not unstable. He was not fringe. He was a microbiologist employed at Fort Detrick, Maryland, the United States Army's Center for Biological Warfare Research. In the early 1950s, Fort Detrick was expanding rapidly. The Korean War had ended. Cold War tensions were escalating. There were reports, some exaggerated, some real, of biological weapons used overseas. The U.S. feared falling behind. Inside the labs, researchers studied anthrax dispersal, botulinum toxins, aerosolized pathogens, methods of delivery, psychochemical agents. Olson worked within the Special Operations Division. This division collaborated directly with the CIA, field testing, interrogation research, covert deployment systems. Some experiments were defensive, some were not. Colleagues later described Olson as thoughtful, intelligent, but increasingly troubled. He had witnessed interrogations in Europe. He had seen techniques that blurred ethical lines. According to later accounts, Olson confided that certain programs disturbed him. He questioned whether the research crossed into something darker. In the Cold War, doubt was dangerous, not legally, but culturally. You did not question national security priorities. You did not hesitate. 10 days before his death, Olson attended a retreat. November 18, 1953. A rustic cabin at Deep Creek Lake, Maryland. Present were CIA officers and Army scientists, among them Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, head of the CIA's Technical Services Staff, the architect of a growing secret project. After dinner, drinks were poured, cointreau was passed around. The mood was relaxed. 20 minutes later, behavior shifted. Laughter became erratic. Anxiety crept in. Visual distortions emerged. The men had been dosed with LSD, without warning, without consent. Gottlieb later admitted it was an experiment, to observe reactions, to measure psychological vulnerability, to test whether LSD could destabilize individuals. The project would later be known as MK Ultra, but in 1953, it was simply another classified initiative. Frank Olson reacted differently than others. He did not laugh. He did not stabilize quickly. Witnesses said he became withdrawn, paranoid, emotionally shaken. He reportedly said, "I feel like my mind is being taken apart." In the following days, Olson struggled to sleep. He appeared disoriented. He questioned his work. He spoke of resigning. This alarmed his superiors, not because of his mental state, but because of what he knew. November 24th, Olson is flown to New York, accompanied by Dr. Robert Lashbrook, a CIA colleague. They visit a CIA-connected psychiatrist. The recommendation, further observation. They check into the Statler Hotel, room 1018A. Olson calls his wife. He sounds strained. He says he has made a mistake in his career. He seems distant. On November 27th, they dine. They return to the hotel. Nothing unusual is reported. At 2:30 a.m., glass shatters. Olson falls. The window was closed. The shade was drawn. The blinds were down. To exit, he would have to rise from bed, cross the room, pull aside the curtains, push through the glass. There were no documented defensive wounds, but there was limited forensic processing. In 1953, scenes were not preserved the way they are today. Lashbrook allegedly calls a CIA contact, says he's gone. The response, according to later reports, that's too bad. Police rule suicide quickly. No extended homicide inquiry, no grand jury, no independent federal review. The CIA informs Olson's family he had suffered a breakdown, that he jumped. Case closed. The Olson family accepted the official explanation for decades. Then in 1975, the Rockefeller Commission began investigating CIA abuses. MK Ultra was revealed publicly. It had involved unwitting civilians, prisoners, patients, military personnel, all exposed to LSD and other substances without consent. The Olson family learned Frank had been drugged, deliberately, secretly. President Gerald Ford invited the family to the White House, issued an apology. Financial settlement followed. The government admitted wrongdoing in the drug experiment, but maintained the death was suicide. The family did not fully accept it. In 1994, Olson's body was exhumed. Forensic pathologist Dr. James Starrs examined the remains. He reported blunt force trauma to the head, injury patterns that, in his view, suggested possible pre-fall impact. Could Olson have been struck, rendered unconscious, then thrown? The CIA denied any such claim. Many MK Ultra documents had been destroyed in 1973, ordered by Sidney Gottlieb. Paper trails were incomplete, witnesses aging, memories fading. Was it suicide under chemical distress, an accidental fall during confusion, or a silencing? Room 1018A no longer exists. The Statler was later renovated, but the questions remain. Frank Olson fell. That is documented. He was secretly dosed with LSD. That is documented. He was working on classified programs. That is documented. What is not documented is whether he jumped. Because when governments experiment in secrecy, the line between breakdown and cover-up becomes thin. And sometimes, the truth is not destroyed, it is diluted. This file is not closed, it is only partially declassified. If you want to understand the full scope of MK Ultra, the destroyed files, the expanded experiments, and the institutional aftermath, Episode 2 continues this file. Subscribe to the Cold Files, because some operations were classified, but not all of them stayed buried.